My next guest is a legend in the LA scene, and it's so interesting because it's different generations and different experiences that we have. They're all united by the love of music and the love of rock music, but we come back from different generations, different times, and also the scenes are different. So where LA had the whole, for lack of a better phrase, the hair metal scene that
I
was kind
hate
of
that
even,
word. I hate
which
that
I
word.
hated, and we get, by the way, we get lumped into that too,
Right.
and I hate that because it's just good bands playing music and that's all it is. But this is what the media does to make things easier for people to digest and understand. Let's just say the '80s genre that LA was known for, we came out of the '70s genre in New York, which would be called punk. Everything was called punk, whether it was punk or it wasn't punk, it was just labeled as punk and CBGBs. So we had that version, and I think you probably had that kind of version, except it was in LA. So my guest is has been the host of Headbangers Ball, and if you know anything about the Cathouse, if you'll learn about it. If you don't know anything about it, otherwise, we have the guy who kind of started it. That's a legendary room in LA. And I'm so glad he's here. He's actually here in Manhattan. He's actually celebrating a birthday today, which is really wonderful. So
My
your
wife's
wife, your
birthday.
wife's birthday. So
Yes.
that's great. And she's here. She's kind of sitting off camera right now. And so please welcome into my office studio, Riki Rachtman. Hey, buddy.
Thank you very much. Really good to be here. And before we went on, it's just fun hearing you talk. We all have so many stories. And like you said, it was, it wasn't that far removed from the 70s to the 80s. But everything, whatever people think about what the Hollywood rock scene is, like I look at what I selfishly call my scene, where the bands like the Guns N' Roses and the Faster Pussycats, which are not like a lot of the Sunset Strip kind of bands. And even though they were, but I think our genre of music really took a real lot from your genre of music. It's like, we never said hair metal, but we were so influenced by bands like, the early Twisted and the Bowie and the Johnny Thunders and all that stuff, which is really the same stuff. That's where ours came from.
So what's kind of interesting, and you made such a, there's something you said that I went, wow, this guy, he really gets it. When you were talking about the kind of response from real metalheads to what they perceived was the Poison type of, glammy looking bands, how they didn't have respect and, that kind of a thing. Back in our day when the '70s were happening, and, we were a '70s band that made it in the '80s. That's really what we were. We were a '70s bar band that made it in the '80s. There was a real cultural divide between the fans that went to CBGBs in Manhattan and the kids who came out to see us in the suburbs. Those two groups never saw eye to eye. Our fans would occasionally venture into CBGBs and come back with like, "Oh, we saw these horrible bands they can't play," and then all those people would kind of occasionally come out Long Island and go, "Oh, who wants to hear that crap?" It was a real kind of cultural divide. That's how we forget about the disco thing. That's a whole separate issue. But just in case, in terms of the music, there was a real separation, a certain elitist feel. And every time a Lower East Side band would come out to Long Island or upstate New York or Jersey, whether it was Television, whether it was the Dolls, Ramones, didn't go over well because those kids wanted to hear Smoke on the Water or
Right,
or like
right.
Priest, like they wanted, or the AC/DC, the hits. They weren't interested in this like stuff. You guys didn't have anything like that, correct?
Oh my God, it's never stopped. I mean, I think, what we used to call our music, we didn't say the word hair metal, but we would call it like gypsy junkie music because everybody kind of dressed like gypsies and
You're
kind of a lot
right.
of them were junkies. But like I remember being at the Cat House in the early days and Slash was going to go see Slayer, which of course was a different genre. And there always was different groups, but I think selfishly think our scene was definitely, if you even listen to Faster Pussycat, there's a lot of punk there. There's a lot of Johnny Thunders there. And but yeah, there really always was. I remember when I saw Faster Pussycat open up for Ace Frehley and they got pelted by bottles, just pelted with bottles. And I mean, I remember Guns N' Roses getting pelted with stuff. So there was a lot of that stuff. And it's still like that to this day. But what people don't know is the people that are in some of the heaviest heavy bands, the growling bands, they like a lot of that 80s stuff a lot,
Well, they grew up with that
They grew
stuff.
up with that stuff.
They evolved into the Cookie Monster stuff that we call it.
I love it though. I love this. I
We're
love that stuff.
seven dust all over the place.
Right.
But I basically, helped create that
Right.
band, and so I loved it. The music always matters. and the
Yes.
quality of the players.
Riffs.
The riffs matter and the quality of the players matter, and that can never be changed. It's the
Agreed.
quality of the
Agreed.
players. So tell me, take me back to your beginnings. Tell me how you got into the Headbangers Ball, how you evolved into the whole LA scene. Were you ever a musician to that scene? Or
I've always been a wannabe musician.
okay.
To this day, I mean, I got to sing 2 weeks ago with me, Slash, and Duff, and Gilby, and Fred, and everybody. So I've always been a
You
wannabe
friend of Dean
musician.
Del Rey by the
Yeah, I know Dean.
have you seen him do the AC/DC cover thing? Oh, he's done it at the Cathouse, didn't he? Doesn't he do that AC/DC cover
No,
band?
The Cathouse 30th anniversary, which Twisted played one of the nights,
Yes, we
which
did.
nobody, I'm like, what's a band? Because everybody expected like the LA bands. I'm like, what's a band that people hadn't seen? Because you guys had pretty much called it quits at that. I go,
Yeah.
what's a band that would play the Cathouse that nobody would ever guess? And there were curtains, and I didn't even tell Tammy. So when I say nobody knew because you guys showed up like from the parking lot right onto the stage, and the curtain dropped, and it was Twisted, and people lost their fucking minds because nobody expected that. But I don't remember what the question was.
Oh, so the question was like, how did you begin this thing? Tell me your journey.
I grew up in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I've always been in rock and roll. My father, I didn't live with my father, but my father managed rock and roll bands. So I was going to shows like, I remember being a kid seeing Thin Lizzy open for Queen.
I saw that tour.
Did you really?
Nassau Coliseum in
I saw
1975.
I
And
think
by
it was
the
the
way,
full-
just so you know, I saw Queen open for Mott the year before.
Wow,
Okay.
wow, that's a
At
good
the Eros Theater. Nobody knew who Queen was
Right.
then. Like nobody. And these four guys show up and look, Mott was Mott. And Mott
Right.
is great and their songs are great. But Queen was ridiculous for a band you never even heard of. And a guy in the Hamptons said to me, I'll never forget this. He goes, there's a band of four guys that may be the most perfect set of four human beings next to the Beatles, and they're called Queen. And I didn't know who they were. So I saw them. And then, of course, I saw them the following year when Thin Lizzy
That was
opened,
funny.
which was that was Tie Your Mother Down tour. It was 70s. Didn't they?
No, because Bohemian Rhapsody was out at that time. Because I remember they did it and they played film of the four guys singing like from the video,
Right.
and then they went and they changed costumes, and then they came out for like the heavy part.
They were amazing, though, weren't they? And
Amazing.
Thin Lizzy was amazing.
I have one of the worst memories ever. But I remember Phil like when he was playing and like the light would hit his guitar and he would be like moving it around, and he was just. I mean, I love Thin Lizzy is such a pure, great rock and roll
Do
band.
you know that we saw their very, very, very last show?
Ah,
And so let me tell you, the live show they did in England, that was supposed to be their last show. It wasn't. They did a tour. They did the Marches of Rock tour in Europe, and we were the next to opening band. It was Ozzy, Meatloaf, Blue Oyster Cult, Thin Lizzy, White Snake, and Motorhead, right? And we toured all around Europe, and they kept saying this is Thin Lizzy's last run, and we got to Nuremberg, which was on August 30th, 1983, and it was the last show of the last show, and everybody was like crying backstage. Like everybody was like, hey, we all went up on stage. Every band was standing there, basically in tears, watching that last show. One of the great bands of all.
well, if you think about it, I mean, maybe you could say it about the Rolling Stones, but there's very few bands that have come out with heavy songs, ballad songs,
Melodic
dancing
riff,
songs,
incredible
almost
riff.
Van Morrison type songs. And I mean, I love Thin Lizzy is one of the few bands that I never stopped liking. And that was a band that, like a lot of the people, if you look at some of the pictures of the 80s of bands that would play the Cathouse, you'd see people wearing Thin Lizzy shirts.
I love it. Nobody said a bad word about it.
Never.
Ever. First of all, they had some of the greatest guitar players in the world
Right.
pass
Oh my
through the
God.
band.
God.
Number one, Brian Robertson became a super friend of ours, came on stage, played with us a number of times, along with Pete Way and along with Lemmy Waugh. I digress. I'm sorry. I don't want to take away. So go ahead. Tell me, so your background.
I'm just having fun.
Yeah,
For once,
so
I'm not talking.
So,
So I grew up in the Hollywood, in the LA scene, and I started as a club DJ. And
how old are you at this time?
20. So I was getting into clubs when I wasn't old enough. And it just, I don't want to give my whole storytelling show away, but basically I got certain gigs that led me to certain things. I was a DJ at Tommy Lee and Heather Locklear's wedding, and I was a club promoter. And then, I was in the rock scene, but I was DJing these dance clubs, and I just decided I want to do a rock and roll dance club. My roommate was starting a band called Faster Pussycat. I
Mhm.
was friends with Axel and Duff at the time because we were really a community. And I opened the Cat House purely because I just wanted a place that we could all hang out
So
at.
how exactly do you open a club?
This is how
Like
I
how
open. This
do
is
you
the
open
deal.
a club?
And you know this because you know so much about business. If you really believe in what you're doing, you can kind of get people to believe your bullshit when you really don't know what you're doing. That's what I feel. Like if you talk like you know what you're doing, you can convince people, but you got to back it up. Am I wrong?
No, you're not. Well,
You got to
you just
back
have
it
to have
up.
balls,
You
my
got- you
friend.
oh you
I
got to
gotta
have
have the
balls.
answers. You have to have balls. You have to have the
Yes,
answers.
and
So
you've got to
to
back it up.
stop the conversation, excuse me, to stop the conversation.
You can't lie. You
Right.
can't lie.
But you gotta
There's a
have the
difference
shit.
between lying and a kind of a brilliance of bullshitting. But I told this dilapidated disco, I'm like, look, man,
What street? Where was the?
this was on Luskin. It was the Oscars disco that was used in the movie Thank God It's Friday.
Okay.
And it was, I mean, you would walk through and fall through the stairs and everything. And I remember, telling these people, I'm like, look, man, the bar's closed down. You guys keep the bar, and I'll just make the money off of the door.
So you kept the liquor license. In other words,
No, no, they had it.
oh, they had the
I
license.
never, Cathouse still to this day sells Cathouse shirts worldwide. I never ever owned a bar. I was a promoter and I never got any money from the alcohol, but I would make my money from the door, which eventually led to merchandise and stuff like that. And then I became a promoter, promoting, a few shows for bands like Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, stuff like that. But basically, it was just hustling in the street, passing out flyers, and it was not only was it a right place, right time, but it doesn't hurt that your best friends are becoming the biggest rock and roll bands in the world, helping to promote it. And I just believed in it and I never gave up. Even when the second night we had 50 people there and everybody said, give it up, give it up. I never ever stopped. So when the club got bigger and I kept on parlaying it into other things, and then the Headbangers Ball came. So
Talk about the evolution. That's this great story about how you got the gig at Headbangers Ball.
well, your friend D. Snyder pretty much came up with the idea. I got to give him props on that. And then it was sort of, Headbangers Ball was on with different hosts, but I didn't really watch it that much because it was on Saturday nights. And
Yeah, wasn't Adam the hosting it?
Adam was the host. Everybody,
Yeah.
Howard Stern even hosted it
You're
once.
kidding.
Everybody hosted that show
Did
at
Dee
one
host
point.
it?
D started a
He
show
did.
called, D started a show called Oh my God, why am I forgetting what it's called? Heavy metal. Oh, I feel like an idiot for forgetting what it was. But he started a show like Heavy Metal Mania or something that was on MTV, and he was doing heavy metal videos. And then he said, you guys got to start paying me. And they didn't come up with the money. And then they tried doing Headbangers Ball and they had different hosts. And then it was Axel that suggested, hey, you should audition. I'm like, yeah. So he called New York and went with me to the audition. And it worked. I'd never been on TV, never been on radio. I had no experience
He
at all.
paid for your plane ticket, didn't he?
No, he didn't pay for my plane
For your
ticket.
hotel. What did he do?
He did pay for the hotel,
Okay.
and he flew business, which was a big downgrade for him, and I flew business, which was a big upgrade for me. But I mean, it was brilliant.
Were you
It was
nervous when you
great.
went in for that audition?
Yes, you gotta understand. I'm not like there's a lot of people that are heavy metal, whether it's the Eddie Trunks or Jose Magnans or all these people, Mark Strigos. They all do great jobs at what they do, but I never had any experience of. I didn't have aspirations of being a TV or radio host. I think I always wanted to work in radio. So the first time on camera, and I watched those episodes, and I was just like, if I ran into the guy that hosted the first episode of Headbangers Ball, I would have fucking punched him. He was such a conceited, cocky dork. But what happened as I got more and more comfortable hosting the show, that I really said, you know what, I'm not going to ask you who your producer is, and I'm not going to ask you this. I'm going to do whatever. If I want to cut my hair in the middle of the 90s metal thing, I'll do that. And if I want to go play in a water park, or if I want to go do all this goofy shit and have fun and be the butt end of a joke sometimes. And that's when I felt more and more comfortable doing the show, and I liked it.
Yeah, they want you to be authentic.
Yeah, because that's all I was. I was the guy that had the cat house. I was the guy, and yes, a lot of these bands were my friends, which meant that a lot of these bands knew they could give me a hard time, which some people thought was like, oh, these guys all hate Ricky. It's like, no, you know better. Your band knows better than anybody. You love to bust people's balls, you know? And that you do that usually about people that you care about, you people that you like, some of my friends are in some of the biggest rock and roll bands in the world, and I have no idea. I don't talk to Slash about music, stuff like that. You're just hanging out with these people. So that's what I like to do on MTV. And it was just very bizarre that it made me like a celebrity. It was very weird to be. I remember when GQ magazine called me a D-list celebrity, and I thought it was the coolest. I'm like, I'm a D-list celebrity. This is the greatest thing in the world. Like my name was even mentioned in a magazine. But I never ever ever stopped to the point of being a sickness. I kept on taking it one step further, and seeing how I could grow it to whatever I had. And I've had a lot of things that have just fallen apart where I've lost absolutely everything. But then I just try to find a different way, whether it's creating a NASCAR radio show or my latest venture, which is doing these spoken word tours, which is without a doubt the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in
And
my
we'll get
entire
to
career.
we'll definitely get to
Yes.
that. So let me can you give me the flavor of what the Sunset Strip was like in 82, 83, 84? I mean, it must have just been, we came there for the
Right.
first time in 83. And we were never Twisted was stuck here, right in the East Coast. Right? We'd never been west of basically the Delaware water gaps. And we finally got the record deal and we got no tour support. The record label, basically said, screw you. They don't really get. In fact, our record went over budget by $4,500. They weren't going to release the record unless we paid them back $4,500. That's how fucked up. Let me put it this way: Michael Jackson can go over budget by $750,000.
Right.
Fleetwood Mac can go over budget by $2 million. We go over budget by $4,500, and we couldn't. They said unless you pay us back, we're not
Oh
releasing the
my
fucking
God.
record. That's how scummy my old Atlantic. I love the people now, but they were
I was
really
just gonna say
stuck
ask
back
you a
in the day.
question.
So
Right.
anyway, so we're in rental cars in Winnebago as we're driving, and I remember we're in a Winnebago which broke down in Raton, New Mexico, and like we look like D's in the van. Don't get out of the. But we'll be killed if they see D. I said, D, you stay in the Winnebago. I walked out and went to a diner and went, how you doing? My name is JJ, and we're in a Southern Cross band, and my vehicle broke down. We need some cars, and you can help us. And they said, yeah, go to the Annie Get Your Gun bar across the street and speak to this guy, Pistol Mangino, because his brother Wayne owns a ugly duckling used car agency. I mean, this is like Smoking the Bandit shit.
Right.
I'm in New York, like, hey, what the fuck is your problem? Not this fucking wacky cinematic nonsense. It's like a Quentin Tarantino fucking movie.
Right. Right.
So I go there and you get your gun bar, and then they turn me on to this guy, Pistol Mangino, who told me about his partner Wayne. And he gives us two rental cars. He goes, I'll give you rental cars. I said, what are you going to do with the Winnebago broke down? What do we do with it? Take it to Happy Gonzalez, the Chevy dealership, and leave it there and get a fucking Happy Gonzalez. Where the fuck do they get these names from? We get these rental cars and we start driving. We finish and then we get to LA. Let me tell you, drive into Los Angeles at daybreak on whatever it was morning in the summer of 83. I would turn on the radio at MET and they're
KMT.
blasting fucking metal. And I'm like, wow, like this is like, people like my daughter says, yeah, New York City's so boring. I said, you think this is boring? I said, sweetheart, people, do you ever want to go to Peoria? No. Well, people in Peoria want to be here. So, like, don't tell me this is boring. Well, people either want to be in Hollywood,
Right.
New York,
Right.
Miami, maybe Chicago, and Europe. That's really what these kids dream about. So we are finally free in LA. And I remember we played at the Hollywood Palladium.
Okay.
First
Bigger
gig
venue.
with Blackfoot and Crocus.
Okay.
29-minute opening set. Warned that if we went 1 minute over, they would turn our amplifiers off. Right. And it was like a whole new world. Like I thought, oh my God, like this, what a scene. There was a scene, that scene that you guys embellished or embodied in 82, 83, 84, the whole strip. We had nothing like that
Right.
in New York. So again, what was it like? What was the street vibe like? What were the club scenes like back
It
then?
was, I mean, Cathouse opened up in 86. And I was sort of just getting out of punk rock in 1982 because I was into my background is the late 70s, early 80s punk rock. That's all I cared about. There were a couple artists that
But you were a Van Halen Rat fan or not? You didn't care
I mean,
like
I
that.
am, I
You
mean,
can admit, you can
when
admit,
I
you
was
can admit to Ricky can admit to this now, right?
I think
But
Rat. I think Rat puts out has got more solid songs than most bands. I love Rat. I love all that music. When I was a kid, it was all about Alice Cooper. To this day, it's about Alice Cooper. I had a Jimi Hendrix poster above my wall. Back then, I thought Ted Nugent was the coolest thing in the world,
well,
Cat Scratch Fever and everything. But then in about 79 and 80, I remember going to my first punk rock show, which was Black Flag, The Germs,
Yeah.
Fear, and then I went to go see the Ramones, and then it was just like all about punk rock to me. But the interesting thing is a lot of the bands from what I selfishly call the Cathouse era, these this came from punk rock. A lot of these people came from punk rock. So this was a time that punk rock in LA was getting too violent. It was just like, before it was pogoing and slam dancing, but then it was just like people punching each other in their
Dead Kennedy
fights.
era, even like
No, a little bit after
after
that, a
that,
little bit after
after
that.
that. Yeah.
A lot, even though I love the Orange County bands, there's a lot of Orange, Huntington Beach,
Okay.
even though I lived there for a while. It was just becoming more violent. And then somehow I got into the rock and roll scene, but it was like I didn't really see it was, of course, very different than the punk rock scene. But some of the music back then had a lot of the same kind of aggression, and it was just more image. And back then, as you know better than I do, putting makeup on and wearing all this stuff was actually the biggest form of saying fuck you than anything was,
Biggest
when
form of rebellion.
the biggest form of rebellion. So when you had guys wearing makeup, it wasn't this like lolly lolly thing. It was like, this is the ultimate fuck you to anybody else. And it was, and the Bowies did it, and
Well, yeah, we were led by T-Rex
of
and
course,
Bowie and
of course,
Sweet
of
and
course,
all those kind of
Slay.
glam, and we love those glam bands. We
Right,
loved, but they were poppy. They were
right,
very, very
right,
poppy band. Great songs,
right,
but very poppy. It wasn't necessarily rebellious.
right.
And Bowie had this unique ability to kind of skirt every genre, like
Every
just
genre.
be perfectly perfect everything he touched. Like, listen, I saw Bowie when he came to Carnegie Hall in 1972. That photo that you saw in my hallway was the week before he played his first show.
Ah,
During that month of September 72, the Dolls had a residency at the Mercer Arts Center, and my high school friends had lived with Billy and Sil from the Dolls in England a year before that. So they said, you got to come down and see the Dolls. So I had transitioned from my Grateful Dead mentality, cut my
right,
hair off, dyed it blonde because of Mick Ronson. I saw a picture of Mick Ronson. I had to look like Mick Ronson.
right,
That was a guitar guy to me. And I go down to Mercer Arts Center, and there's the Dolls. And they used to rehearse in a place called Talent Recon, which was a rehearsal studio on 8th Avenue. And I kind of knew Johnny Thunders. Why did I know Johnny? Because I was a drug dealer in the parking lot. He
right,
was a junkie, and everybody fucking knew Johnny. He was just one of those guys. And he wasn't a particularly good guitar player. Like there was a million guitar players in those days. Everyone played a guitar. Everyone carried a guitar with them, and everyone jammed all the time. Johnny wasn't particularly good. And we were at Talent Recon once before Twisted rehearsing, and I heard them. I went, "Who the fuck? That sounds pretty bad." So anyway, I go down to see the Dolls, and who walks in? Bowie. I have a photo of Bowie sitting right behind me at that Doll show, and then I saw Bowie at Carnegie Hall, and he was so early on. There was no stage set. There was just a backdrop. That's all it was the backdrop for the album. And the band came on and did the whole Ziggy album,
ah,
and then they did half of Man Who Sold the World, and then they ended with two Chuck Berry songs, which I thought was a rather strange. But then I thought, but they're rock and rollers. They're British. The British love rock and roll. They all will. They'll tell you that Chuck Berry rises and falls. Right? That's what they all do. Many years later, we're on the bill with Uriah Heep, and Trevor Bolder is in Uriah Heep, and we're going to a. I'm in an elevator. He's coming back from the festival. I get on. I look at him and go, Trevor Bolder, like I'm in awe, right? I'm like, JJ Frank Twizzlers, so nice to meet you. I saw you in 72. I saw you at Carnegie Hall. I said, was I imagining, or did you end with some Chuck Berry songs? He goes, no. I said, why? He said, we ran out of material. And Mick says, play round and round and Johnny be good. Like, how weird is it to see Bowie
right.
like that, right? But that was the weird thing, again, getting back to Bowie. He held this strange, uni-
Darby
like,
Crash of the Germs was the biggest Bowie fan. Bowie was the guy that because he had beautiful songs. He was so extremely talented, but there was still a rebelliousness,
punkiness about it,
and everything. And there's very few musicians that I think are generally liked by a lot of different genres. Bowie is one. I
I think
think
Lou Reed is definitely, you can't say he's not. That album
yes, but I
Transformer
don't.
was really a spectacular record.
Yes, yeah,
Produced by Mick Ronson, by the way,
right, right,
right, which is why the songs were so good and the musicianship was so good. And Rock and Roll Animal is one of the greatest live albums ever from Hunter and Wagner, who I played with, every major, I played with Alice. He knew great musicians.
right.
So if Lou wrapped himself around great musicians, it elevated him a great deal. But you weren't like that much of a Aretha. You just didn't like.
Wasn't that, I mean, every time me and my wife ride motorcycles coast to coast all the time, and every time it's raining and we make a video, we put Perfect Day in it because I just think that's such a beautiful song. I really like that song. But I
Great
was
song.
never that much of a Lou Reed fan.
Right.
I wasn't. I don't know why, I just wasn't. I mean, I don't, I do, will I listen to him? Of course I will. Do I have a rec album? Yeah. Um, but yeah, wasn't my thing. But anyways, whatever we got,
Well,
go.
we were traversing the styles of music that were coming in that
Yes,
that people loved, and we got into this Bowie thing because everybody seemed to love Bowie, and that
everybody
became
loved
a
Bowie.
universal kind of a
But
thing.
you know who else? In one band that I think that because they did so much stuff after that people don't realize how brilliant they are, and nobody looks at them the same way they would look at the Stones, was Aerosmith, where so many people were very influenced by Aerosmith at the time. Because I mean, I remember, when Toys came out, oh my God, that was just like nonstop, and it had so many different flavors to it, and that was a great album as well. And
Draw the Line was great. Look, they made
ah,
cover albums that were spectacular, and Twisted
amazing.
used to play. We used to cover Aerosmith songs, but I have to tell you, the first time I saw Aerosmith live was '75, and we were already started to play Aerosmith songs. And Nugent opened. I'd heard of Nugent. Amboy Dukes, never seen him, so really didn't know much about him.
Right,
He was amazing, and
right.
Aerosmith was the worst.
But
Fucking
there was
back
a
then,
time back then, like
they
the
were
Long Beach
so
shows and everything.
fucked up
They
they were
and
so bad. I walked in.
absolutely
I said to Eddie Ojeda, I said, Eddie, we do these songs. Do you recognize a single song? He said I couldn't recognize anything. It was so bad. And ultimately, they got their shit together
right.
and they got great again. And I'm glad they did because they are one of the great American bands.
Agreed.
Maybe they may not get the respect, but they should because there's not a large. If you look at the what England has given us is Beatles, Stones, Who's That, Floyd, Queen. That's pretty much fucking Mount Rushmore shit. Like that's like how do you argue? You don't argue. It's harder to find the bands in America that that equal the same level of sociological
With hard rock,
impact. It's next to hard. You got it's
God, I mean, I start to think, I'm like, wait, that's not an American band.
it's
That's a
tough.
really good
It's
question.
a tough
That
question
really
because I
is.
always say to people the difference between America and the UK is that UK has given us the great bands and we've given the world great individuals. We've given them Elvis, we've given them James Brown, we've given them Chuck Berry and Johnny Cash, and the list goes on and on of the individuals that we've made. And if you go to England, you make a case for Bowie, you can make a case for Elton, but it's a small list. The same way great bands in America is a small list compared to Beatles, Stones, Who's That, Floyd, Queen. I mean, Beatles, and you throw AC/DC into that, and you've got a wall that's so fucking impenetrable in terms of the impact that it has made in terms of
Like,
what
if
you
you really
feel.
think about
It's
bands
great.
from that era that made an impact, I'm like, Grand Funk. Like, I'm trying to
And
think of rock bands of that era that really did that you would look at and put up on that Mount
I
Rushmore.
would say, because I'm older than you, I would say the Beach Boys because they had a huge impact in the '60s, a
Right.
major impact. And the band, even though they're Canadian, I think the band has made spectacular records. And by the way, this doesn't mean I don't appreciate the Doors, love the Doors, or I don't appreciate many other bands. But in terms
Doors
of
never had that big of a catalog,
well,
you know?
they have a lot of hits. Doors are big, and you can get an argument. And Grateful Dead, listen, don't get into an argument with a Dead fan because they'll just smoke you to death. If you
Right,
get an argument with a Dead fan, I saw the Dead 28 times.
right.
Okay, so you're talking to a
Well, this is where
full-blown
we differ.
yeah. And by the way, no, I saw him 27 times on acid.
Right.
Greatest band I ever saw on the 28th time.
Right,
It was
right,
the
right.
worst band I ever saw. I never went back to see them again. It's like
Right.
a joke that it's in my documentary. I got into the shtick of the Dead, and to their credit, one of the great, they're legendary. They were the
Of
largest
course.
drawing concert band for 30 years in a row in the United States. So you can't this.
It's the same people going to every single show.
Well, they used to say if you wanted to sell out a Grateful Dead show in Kansas, advertise in the Village Voice. That's what they used to say because the fans traveled everywhere.
Right.
But the point is that in terms of effective permeating the consciousness of people, the British bands really kind of took over, and the American bands didn't seem to have it. But we've got look, the Ramones are a great band.
Absolutely.
I saw the Ramones in 1975
God, I
at
wish I did.
CBGB's,
I saw
and
79 at
and a
UCLA.
girl I was going out with said, "You got to go see this band, the Ramones." We were a big bar band in Long Island, so she takes me to a matinee show at CBGB's in the summer of 1975. It was a 4 o'clock in the afternoon show. I'd never been in a CB's. At this point, I'm 23 years old, very cocky because we're drawing thousands of people, and I said, "Who the fuck is this band?" and I was not a fan of the Dolls. I knew them. I didn't think they were good. I didn't think they were a good band. That's all. They just were not a good band. Didn't like them. But go see the Ramones. About 20 people at CB's that day. There was no stage. They played on the floor. The PA system was on 2 tables. We're talking the early level. They come out with their Marshall stacks, and I have to tell you, they knew who they were. The best way I can put it. They knew exactly who they were, and they laid it out exactly the way they did. And I said to her, I said, they may not be the best musicians in the world, but they fucking know who they are, man. And that's the difference between the good and the great ones. They knew who they were.
Right.
And they were great. And Joey was wearing a Jaws t-shirt because the movie had just come out. And I'm thinking, wow, that's cool as a topical t-shirt. It's the movie that's a hot movie of the summer. He's wearing a Jaws shirt. He didn't have to say anything. It was a symbolic shirt.
Right.
Very influential band.
Oh, yeah.
Very influential. They may not have sold a lot of records, but they made a big impact with a lot of
But people still know the music.
On their merch sells like crazy.
Of course it does. Of
the
course it
hippest shirt
does.
in the world.
Of
It's
course.
like a Ramon shirt or a CB shirt. Did you ever? So you never got the CBs? I'm like,
it's funny. I was just talking, and it's really not a New York. It's not a New York show, and it's not a show in New York if you don't have sirens. I was just talking to my wife, and it was 49 years ago today that the Misfits played their very first show at CB's. And so I was just telling Leah, I was like, it's kind of sad that I've never been to CBGB's. And so maybe we'll even, I think it's John Varvatos' store or something.
It is a Varvatos, so you can walk in. The Dolls actually, Kiss and the Dolls played there as the Varvatos store for publicity. I didn't see the Kiss show, but I saw the Dolls show. And he had a whole bunch of studio guys behind Dave Johansen, and they were very, very good. Why? Because he had people that could play.
Right.
And they actually played really well. In fact, did you see the Scorsese documentary, the movie he did about the Dolls and Mercer Arts Center? It was the Jag.
No.
Called Vinyl.
No.
Show called Vinyl.
Oh, no. I didn't like it.
But you know about it,
It
right?
was scripted.
Right. Scripted.
With actors.
Exactly.
Didn't like it.
So because I spent all the time in Mercer Arts, I'm watching it because I was there. I'm going, none of that happened.
Right.
But here's the thing. The music was great. I'm thinking to myself, that can't be it's not them. Who the hell? It turns out my friend is a studio guitar player, did all the guitar for them, and he was a great player. So they had the good songs, just the playing wasn't all that great. That's all I'm saying. The playing was not all that great. But CB's, I went a lot because I was managing Seven Dust, so I'd be down there, or my wife was working for the chairman of EMI, and they would have all these bands playing CB's, so I had to go to CB's. And eventually Seven Dust, before they were Seven Dust, was called Crawl Space.
Nice guys, by the way.
Yeah, well, they were called Crawl Space.
Yeah.
And I had already been through 7 different iterations of the band before they became Seven Dust. They started out as a quote, as an AC/DC type band called Red Thread. And then they evolved, because this is how the club scene revolved in Atlanta. It went from an AC/DC type of band to a Foreigner kind of band, to then grunge kind of band. They kept changing their name and changing their clothes. So the plaid shirts came on and they were grunge, and this one. So it went from Red Thread to Cupid's Arrow to Snake Nation, which was the grunge version, to Stiff Kitty, which was the proto LA scene type of hair band.
Right.
And bing, 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 bing. And this is how that whole thing. So then eventually they call me, and I had tried to sign them as Snake Nation. I tried to sign them as Red Thread. Everything fell apart. And when they called Crawl Space, they said, you got to come down. And my wife said to me, at this point, Twisted was over. I was working a straight job selling stereos. I was out of the business completely. I was just a stereo salesman. And I said, I think there's something to the band. She goes, no, you're not. You had a shot. You had your shot. It's over. It'll never happen again. I said, trust me. Just give me a month and $2,000 and I'm going to figure it out. So she said, okay. And she did. I went down and we recorded a demo tape for $1,100. And I brought the demo tape up from New York. And on the last week of the last month of my option period, we got signed, right, which was really nice. But I brought them to New York to try to get them a deal. So I get them into CBGB's. I get them into, for Spiral, which was a heroin bar on Houston Street. I warned them. I said, do not drink and drive in New York, because there was roadblocks everywhere. So do not do that. And I get them into the Rock Ridge Saloon. Now, if you know anything about the lower, if you know anything about Bleecker Street, there's the bitter end, which is still there. After all these years, it's still there. Across the street was the Rock Ridge Saloon. I called the Rock Ridge, and I said, "Hey, this is JJ French with sister. I got a band coming up, Crawl Space." And she goes, "I don't take bands from outside of New York. I don't care that you're JJ French. That's not how we do it here at the Rock Ridge." I said, "Thank you very much." I hang up. So they played CB's Nothing Happens. They played Spiral, Nothing Happens. I call the Bitter End, which is a folk club. It's a folk club, but my friend books it. I said, "Kenny."
Well,
I
CBGB's was
said,
kind of at first, wasn't it?
"Yeah, but at the beginning, I mean,
Right.
yeah, that changed like pretty quick. It was a jazz. I mean, he started out as a jazz thing. So my friend Kenny has a great sense of humor. He goes, "I like this band Crawl Space." I said, "Are you sure? They're fucking loud. Your club basically is a tiny little room." He goes, "Yeah, yeah." So across the street's the Rock Ridge. Seven Dust comes in, sets up all their gear, and I swear I have a film. Within 30 seconds, everybody gets up and walks out. I have a film, me standing at the door as everyone's leaving. I'm going, "Kenny, I'm really sorry about this." He goes, "No, no, it's okay, JJ. I really like the guys." And then in walks this woman, Terry Kennedy from the Rock Ridge. She goes, they were so loud, you could hear it across the street into the Rock Ridge. She comes in and says to Kenny, "Oh, well, what's going on? It's fucking loud. You know." He goes, "Oh, it's some band called Crawl Space." She walks up to me and she goes, "I want this band to play in my club." I said, "Oh, really? 2 weeks ago, you told me basically to go fuck myself, that you don't take bands from outside of New York, and they're from Georgia." She goes, "No, I really like them." So they play there. And then what happens is on the way back to the hotel, they get arrested for drunk driving. And they get stopped at a roadblock on 12th Avenue. And I'm with the guitar player, this young kid who's the youngest kid in the band. And we're driving together, and there's a roadblock. And I went, "You weren't drinking, were you?" He goes, "Well," I said, "Tell me you weren't drinking." He goes, "Well, I had like 4 beers." So they arrest him. And the cop looks at me and he goes, "I know you." "Why do I know you?" I said, "Twisted." Says, "Why didn't you tell me that? I wouldn't have done the breathalyzer." I said, "Because you could have done the other way around. You could have said, 'I fucking hate your band.'"
Right.
Now you're both being arrested. You don't know how that's going to roll. So he arrests the kid, and the kid winds up so traumatized by going to the prison system of New York that he leaves the band, and the guy they got to replace him was Clint, who wrote all the songs. How's that for just the
But
weirdness
isn't that
of
how,
life?
but that's the crazy thing is so many things have happened in life that ended up being great things because total happens. I mean, how many times, oh yeah, this guy happened to go to high school with this guy and then they started his band, or how many times, like, because one, I mean, that's a big thing that I say in my show is, when things fall apart, you don't know what direction it's going to lead in. Like there might be things that you're trying and trying and trying and trying to make it work, and it doesn't work. But there was that one time you met that one guy that when it didn't work, and it sends you in a different direction. You got to be willing to adapt because you bob and weave. You don't know where it's going to take you. And I mean, that's my whole career has been that.
So we're going to get to your one man show
Because I
now.
can't. I
Okay, can we talk about this for a couple
Please,
minutes?
let's,
Please
yeah,
do it
because
now.
we have two
Okay.
reservations. We're going to go to art gallery and the hotel.
So you're going to do this,
Okay.
but I will say that I
But
managed.
you can also call me and we can do this through Zoom and
Okay.
take as much because I'm having a blast.
I managed a singer songwriter who wrote a gospel song, and one of the lines in the song is my favorite fucking line. "If you're the ultimate optimist," you know what the line is? "When the roof caves in, it lets the sunshine in." Think about that.
That's really good.
It's one of my favorite lines
That's
because
really
the roof has
good.
fallen in so many times for me,
That's
and
so
the
good.
sunshine has come after the roof fell in, but I couldn't see it at the time. Okay.
What I say at the very ending of my show
So
is
talk about your show.
okay.
Because Ricky's here because we got into this because he's doing a one man show. It's something that I want to do because all you guys know that I talk a lot and have a lot of stories to tell. In the words of my daughter, if I get paid for talking, I'm going to be the richest person on the planet Earth. But
Well, no, I'm not.
but Ricky's
I
right
get
there.
paid for talking.
So Ricky's right there. So Ricky has a one man show which I'm enamored of. He travels around the United States. I want to have him talk a little bit about it.
Called One Foot in the Gutter. Hold on. It's just one of these. Okay. I'm sorry. You can edit this out.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Matt, give us a second. We're chopping up some blow right now. You know.
I'm sorry.
So, of course, the norm.
um, it's like one of the things I said because as we both have experienced, we've had some real lows, some real things that are kind of gut wrenching and things like,
It's just people who can't.
yeah, absolutely. How many times of like, didn't you used to be the guy that, yes, and now let me, when I was a car salesman, it was tough. And but the thing is, and one of the things that I say in my show is I say you never know when you're going to have the best time in your life, because if I would have listened in my head and killed myself how many times, or just kept on doing this or doing that, but you don't know. Like that's
The beauty is not knowing. You have to appreciate
yeah,
it. The
yeah,
beauty
it's
is truly
tough.
not
It's
knowing.
tough. But what happened is I was going to do a big Cathouse tour, and one of the guys in one of the bands just became a freaking rock
You mean we're
star.
going to take a bunch of bands out with you?
It
What
was an
was the
idea.
Cathouse
It was an idea. It was taking bands from that genre,
Right.
and going out on tour with them and just doing and have dancing girls and this whole crazy thing. Well, it didn't work out. And I've always been interested in the stuff that Henry Rollins does, because he was the only guy that I knew that did spoken. I didn't know what spoken word really was, but I knew that I'd love to talk to people. I mean, when Guns N' Roses didn't have record deals, I'd say, "Can I introduce you on stage?" Like that was my thing. Hey, everybody, I love doing that stuff. And obviously, like both of us, we love to talk. So he said, "Do you want to do what if you did your spoken word at this club in Charlotte?" So I said, "Okay." And I obsessed writing it. And I mean, I wrote it, I put photos and videos. I didn't have anybody help me. And everybody, if you knew all the ups and downs, everybody's like, "Why don't you write a book? Why don't you write a book?" Well, yeah, I want to, but I made this show that kind of talks about all the highs and lows and this and that, and of course the rock and roll stories that people want to hear, and a lot that isn't rock and roll. And I did my very first show at a venue that I think sold like 300-400 people, and it sold out. And I was like, "This is kind of and the show was 3 hours long."
Did you
But
know going in it was going to be 3 hours long? I mean,
so I don't. I think I knew it was definitely going to be like around two. And everybody said, "Well, you could just cut it and you need to have another show." And yes, but I started to play a couple more shows, and I'm like, "Yeah, but I already did this part out there." So yes, I should have cut it a long time ago. The show could have been an hour and a half and it would have been great. And I could have brought it back with a second show, but I didn't. And now that I've done 50 shows, it doesn't matter. But any case, so then I was like, what if I could do it again? And then I did one in Cleveland, sold out. And then all of a sudden, like more and more shows came up, and I got 4 shows in Australia, which is just mind blowing. And a lot of the shows did phenomenal. Some didn't do that great, but there were times when I remember doing a show in Knoxville that was at a venue that fit like 1,000 people, and I had like 70 people there, and they told me to cancel the show. This is when I first started out. And I called a couple friends, and they're just like, "Just go out there and just kick ass." So I went out there and I said, "Look, everybody, there's not a lot of people here. So after the show, I'm gonna hang out with everybody." And I just did my whole show. It got phenomenal reviews. Nobody ever said there was nobody there. And then I just started doing more and more shows. And then just the popularity grew until I just threw me 20 more shows in July. And I go and you can understand, in the 80s, all of my friends were in the biggest rock and roll bands in the world. I was just a wannabe musician. So whenever I hear people telling stories about going on tour, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you went on tour. What's that like? What's that like?" And to be able to do it now in my 60s and see my name with a list of fucking dates on tour. I'm leasing a pickup truck, and it's all DIY. We do. My wife was my road manager. There's a girl that helps me with a t-shirt company that's doing. I mean, it's all DIY, and it is the most unbelievable thing I've ever done in my life. And
super satisfying, isn't it?
oh, there's nothing like that.
Nothing.
People used to say, "Why don't you write a book?" And I thought everybody would like, "Okay, and this is Guns N' Roses, and there is that in the story, but there is, about, getting arrested for fighting with a DJ, or losing everything and having to get a job as a dealer, or dealing drugs and everything else." And people loved it. And it was just, so many times in my life with all my mental issues, you know, a million people say you're great. One person says you suck, and that one person's the one that's correct in your mind. And I learn of all my little mental issues, and how before every show nobody's going to show up, and then they show up, and it's just like, and then I'd be doing things like the way I move on stage and the way I act certain things out. Some of it's almost like a play, and the way and I'm on stage saying to myself, "Where did you fucking learn to do these things? Where are you like?" And saying like, "This is what I'm good at. Like, this is the one thing I know I'm good at." everything I've done in my career, people don't watch Headbangers Ball for Riki Rachtman. Then you go to the Cathouse for Riki Rachtman. But when you go to Riki Rachtman's show, you know it's Riki Rachtman. So it's a really rewarding feeling. I love it more than anything. And I get to do 20 more shows this summer, and it's just mind blowing. And it's a lot of work preparing and having the videos queued and photos. But, trying stuff and it working is just like, wow. And going off stage, it's like, but you have the gift because like when you talk, I love listening to you because what is our life is amazing history to some people, and if we can sprinkle in some of the real human shit that people are like, oh, so not only is this guy this big crazy rock star life, but he's gone through some same shit that I've done. And as my mom said, I'm the king of making horrible choices, but little did I know some of these horrible choices made for really good stories. So,
you say.
So, huh?
We've been turned down more times in a bed sheet in a whorehouse, and we've come back more times than Freddy Krueger. That's what we say, and that's what you got to do. You got to get your ass fucking kicked over and over again to learn how to continue to come.
But here's the thing: I'm a big believer of never give up, never give up. But there is a time when you say this ain't working, so go in a different direction and never give up, never give up. I'm sorry when I play a show and I see some of the bands that were opening bands at the Cathouse and they're in their 60s telling me about their demo and they're going to get a record deal. I'm like, dude, fucking stop, just stop. Play music because you love to play music, but you're not gonna get any further.
No, it's amazing to hear you say these things. This is exactly my opinion when some people come up to me and they ask me this. I said, look, guys, I'm not Yoda, and I'm not gonna tell you it ain't gonna happen. I'm not gonna tell you you're not gonna win the lottery. You can. I said, but if you're asking my professional view of how things are, this isn't really. By the way, one of my other favorite slogans: just because someone tells you you suck doesn't mean you don't suck. You may very well suck. So you have to really pay attention when people talk to you. But when it comes to those people who come to me, especially the worst demo I ever got was from a relative who was a cousin. It was the worst. I should have known by the name of the band that like I should never have even listened to it. And I called his mother and I said, "This is a joke, right? This like they were just high at a frat party." Oh no, you really? I don't know. I said, you don't understand. This makes Lou Reed sound like Luciano Pavarotti. I said, you have got to tell him. I said, what's he studying in school? Podiatry. He needs to become a podiatrist. It's the worst fucking music ever. I am saving you heartache. And Amari, please take my advice. Your family. Normally I wouldn't give a fuck, but your family, stop now. It was the only time I ever really said that because it was just so. The band was called, I should have known. It was called Between Dawn and Nothingness. That was the name of the band. And I went, oh no, this is not good. I just kind of.
Between Dawn and Nothingness.
Yeah,
kind of keep themselves
Dawn and Nothingness.
before ever hitting a chord.
I knew it was going to be on, but yeah, you nail it. And you want to say to people, enjoy it. You have fun, be great, but don't have this lack of reality that you think this is going to go somewhere.
We're all going to have dreams and we're all going to think that this is going to happen and we're all going to work our asses off and you can't get anything without giving up. But there becomes a time when you're going to look like a fucking idiot trying to do the same things over and over. Look, after I got fired from radio and I didn't have anything doing, I was like, I kind of like watching stock car racing. So I pitched a radio show playing rock and roll, talking about NASCAR, syndicated nationally for 20 years. I got into it. Everybody said, dude, you're a rocker. Nobody cares about NASCAR. When I started doing One Foot in the Gutter, I would look at the Facebook pages and people would say, nobody is going to pay money to go see you talk. And I'm like, okay, well, now and the truth is, you can't, I don't think you can create something going after something that's already been done. Like if I said, okay, well, right now it seems like this type of music's really hot, so I'm going to do that type of music.
Right, I'm going to be a grunge band now.
Oh my
God! A year later, or a glam group 2 years later. You following the trend? Never.
And sometimes and be willing to take shitty advice and be willing to take the haters. And you know what? There might be a chance that they're right, but that's tough. But I'm gonna give you an example because I've gotten myself into something coming up. This isn't the greatest idea. Chris Cale is the bass player of Five Finger Death Punch. Okay. He's also starting to work as a comic. Craig Gass is a comic. He does great imitations. He's been on Stern and a whole bunch of stuff. And I said one day, hey, we should all go out on the road and do shows together. So they said, okay. So on May 8th and 9th, I've somehow agreed to do a comedy show, doing 20 minutes of stage on comedy. Okay, we're talking about 2 weeks. I haven't written a thing. my friends are always like, dude, you're so funny, you're so funny. And then I'm like, hey, I'm gonna do a comedy show. You're not a comedian, Ricky. You're not a comedian. So like that's scary. And I go in there saying like I'm I could very well I have no aspirations to be a comic. I think it's the hardest job in the world. But I'm gonna do it,
Because you take
because
chances.
I've been in boxing matches where I got knocked out first round. I've done a lot of shit that I failed,
So how do my listeners find you?
Go to cathousehollywood.com. Cathousehollywood.com. It has all my it has my whole tour dates.
Okay.
And I can't wait. I'm gonna be playing in New York City.
When would that be? Do you know?
Well, New York City is probably like August, like maybe August 1st. I don't remember.
Okay, because
I got New York City.
Don't do it until I get back from Europe, which will be July 31st. So make sure I'm back.
Is it July 31st? I don't know. I don't think it. No, I don't think it is. I think it's in August. But it's it's great. It's just it's tough. And yes, my show is very, very long and it's hard to sit down that long. But it's like I'm on stage doing things that I'm like, wait, how am I moving? This is like I'm sitting on the stage telling a story, like very casual. I'm like, where did I fucking learn to move like this? Like this is where I'm supposed to be, And it's the fact that people like, we have these meet and greet passes where people spend money and they just hang out and talk with me before the show and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, I'm playing in Chickasaw, Oklahoma. Somebody's buying tickets to see me in Chickasaw, Oklahoma. And mostly people have no idea what spoken word or storytelling really is. So it's like it's given me, I'm not saying a new career because I don't know how long I'm going to do this because I'm getting older and I'm not making a lot of money at it, but it's just like, fuck, I'm on to, there's people that buy, Cathouse shirts I've sold for decades, but there's people that are buying Riki Rachtman tour shirts. I'm like, I just bought a shirt with my name on it. It's like, for me who listened to all the Headbangers Ball haters and all that shit, and I'm like, I'm on fucking tour. I'm sitting there designing my own laminates because I think it's so cool to have a laminate. Like all that joy that people got when they started bands and started making it and then forgot about it as they got big. Well, I didn't forget about that. I don't take this for granted and I'm enjoying every minute of it. Yes, I don't like that we have to drive 1,300 miles in 2 days in a pickup truck sometimes, but I get to go on stage and I get nervous between every show and I get to make a writer, which is just like, an energy drink and banana, but still like, I get to have conversations with my friends about playing the same venues, which my whole life I've been jealous of them. And now I get to do it. And
so you live in the dream right now, man, which is really,
if the money was there, it'd be really the dream.
But it probably will get there.
Take the money aspect out of it. I'm absolutely living the dream. I've got a great house, a great wife, and I get to go on stage and talk to people, which is, this is what I used to get in trouble at school for.
Yeah. Well, listen, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. This gentleman stopped by. He stopped by my studio apartment in Manhattan. He's in town to celebrate the weekend with his wife for her birthday, right?
Yes.
New York City.
We're going to art galleries. We're going to great restaurants. We're going to Broadway. I'm like, when we get from the airport, we're going to go see JJ French first. And you're like, okay,
So I hope you appreciate this show, and to my guest Ricky and to his wife, happy birthday. I hope you have a great time. And really thank you for stopping by. I don't want to close it more because I know you have a lot to do,
but I want to hang out
and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And we will do some more of this for sure.
Yes.
And everybody, thank you for listening to the JJ French Connection. And my guest Riki Rachtman, and we will be back next week with new guests. Like I said, don't forget, Twisted is back. Starting in September, check out our
everybody knows that
twistedsister.com with our friend Sebastian Bach. And you guys take care, and we'll be back next week. Thank you.